After you've had enough of the bazaar, be sure to take a walk through the streets nearby, which are also packed with shops and have a lively atmosphere. The surrounding streets actually offer a much more authentic local experience. There's outdoor markets all around it, and that's also quite a treat. You get out into the streets around it, and what do you find but more jewelry shops? That figures. But after a short block, that quickly fades out and we begin to blend into the normal streets of the city. There's all sorts of cotton clothing, denim, copper goods, silk scarves, hats, pants, shoes, friendly people. Everybody wants a piece of your action when you're here in the bazaar. When you get outside the bazaar on the fringes, it gets even more interesting. There's a whole series of streets that go all the way around. The bazaar itself covers about 40 blocks. It's 8 blocks wide and 6 blocks in the other direction. There's nearly 4,000 shops inside under a roof. But outdoors, there's just as many shops all around it, and the city just continues on and on. And the people here are really friendly. Hello.
Morning.
Morning. Good morning. You can get sweaters. You can get all sorts of things. Most of it made in Turkey. And copper goods is another one of the specialties here in the bazaar. The real locals do most of their shopping in other places, but you'll find there's some locals even here in the bazaar. As you're walking along past these markets, all the merchants want you to come into their store. They're all happy to say hello, hello, hello. They want to sell you something. And if you don't want to go in the shops, you just ignore them. Huh? What have you got? What have you got for sale here? What are you selling? Shirts? Perfume? Leather jackets, although they might be made of plastic, so watch out. Cotton socks, but the dyes might run, so watch out there too. There's a lot of cheap stuff here, and there's some quality things if you know how to find it. If you know how to bargain and what to look for. You can even buy corn on the cob right off of a rolling stand. You see quite a few of the ladies wearing scarves here in Turkey. After all, it's a Muslim country. It's the only Muslim country that's not really controlled by religious law, and yet the people here are very religious nonetheless. Book lovers can stroll 1 block over from the bazaar's southwest corner to the bookstalls along Saflar Kasisi. An intellectual atmosphere pervades this long courtyard, with jumbled displays of second-hand books spilling out of the little shops onto sidewalk tables, and with tiny cafes tucked away. Istanbul University is just 2 blocks further, so you will undoubtedly see students milling about as well as many older characters. Notice the street vendors in front of the big Beyazidiye Mosque at the end of this bibliophile alley with cheap clothing strung over their arms, especially denim pants for the students. Nice. You are in the middle of Beyazit Square, one of the liveliest places in the old town, with several nice sidewalk cafes and many people passing through. Pants. Okay. Okay, gotcha. Okay. If you are keen to see more mosques, have a look inside the Beyazidiye Cami'i, built from 1501. Don't linger here too long because a much bigger and more magnificent mosque is waiting about 700 yards away on the other side of the university, the Mosque of Suleyman the Magnificent. After Hagia Sophia, this is the most remarkable of all the religious structures in Turkey, built in the 7 years after 1550 to honor the greatest sultan in Muslim history, Suleyman, who ruled from 1520 to 1566 and greatly expanded the Ottoman Empire. His mosque is the masterpiece of Sinan, the greatest of all Islamic architects, responsible for at least 120 other buildings in Istanbul. The dome reaches 162 feet above the vast prayer hall, which is 230 feet by 200 feet, and additional side domes and aisles further expand the room with very few columns to interrupt the space. Iznik tiles, delicately decorated in floral and geometric motifs, cover most of the walls, and prayer carpets cover the floor. After having seen so many mosques, the pattern is familiar, but in this case it reaches a final state of perfection. The setting of the mosque is equally dramatic, on top of Istanbul's most prominent hill, where it can be seen from much of the city. In the garden behind the mosque stands the grand tomb for Sultan Suleyman and his wife, a double-dome structure surrounded by an arcade and resembling a small mosque. The Mosque of Suleyman can easily be considered one of the greatest buildings ever constructed during the 16th century, a time when the Renaissance was reaching its peak in Western Europe. Not only is it a mosque, but it's a small city within Istanbul, consisting of schools and hospitals and kitchens and housing, all together a magnificent ensemble. Perhaps the most fascinating area of town for experiencing the authentic atmosphere of backstreets and funky shops for locals only is the section of twisted little lanes between the Suleymaniye Mosque and the Grand Bazaar and the Spice Market. This neighborhood is small, just 500 yards on a side, but densely packed with tiny shops and sidewalk vendors selling all manner of pots and pans, clothing, fabrics, brushes, cheap shoes, buckets, hardware, and unusual things you probably don't need but would be delighted to see. It is picturesque to the max, with down-to-earth characters flooding the streets, going about their daily life, shouting out greetings, prices, and conversations, and a sensational cavalcade of noise, smell, and stunning sights that will overload your senses. While these merchants will generally ignore the odd tourist passing through in refreshing contrast to the hawkers and touts back in the Grand Bazaar, they will be glad to talk if you ask them something. Turks are justly famous as friendly people, which can really come through in a casual setting like this. Don't worry too much about picking a specific route to walk through this colorful zone, which is about 8 blocks wide and long, but instead decide at each corner which way looks more interesting at the moment. It's an ideal place to wander. With a detailed map in hand, you can easily cover a good sample of this scruffy shopping district in 1 hour, and then emerge on the downhill lower edge at the must-see Spice Market. The Spice Market is one of the oldest shopping centers in the world, dating back to the 7th century. Inside, they sell exotic spices that you would never see at home, along with nuts, candy, and dried fruits. Remember to bargain for the goods. The L-shaped market is also called the Egyptian Bazaar and has shops on 2 floors with a nice cafe upstairs. It is not nearly as big or touristy as the Grand Bazaar and has an attraction all its own, so don't think that you can skip it because you've already seen the larger market. Both of them are worth your time. Among the unusual items you can find in this and most other markets is Turkish Delight, a sweet treat popular among locals that makes an excellent gift to bring home. Buy several extra boxes, however, because once you have a taste of it, you are going to want to eat it all. This candy has an almond flavor that is not overly sweet, but addictive. You can also get a complete meal from various buffet and restaurant counters here. It's called the Spice Market because originally it was primarily selling spices, and even today there are still some merchants. They estimate only 6 out of the original 86 spice merchants, however, are still in business. First constructed in the 1600s, it was rebuilt in the middle of the 20th century, renovated and modernized a little bit, but still you get this ancient feeling when you're inside that was described by a writer named Théophile Gautier back in 1850 in his book Constantinople, where he described it as an immense hall crossed from end to end and reserved for the movement of both merchandise and consumers. Immediately one is struck, indeed intoxicated, by a penetrating odor composed of scents from all the exotic products. displayed on every side in heaps or open sacks are henna, sandalwood, cinnamon, pistachios, mastic, ginger, nutmeg, opium, hashish, all watched over by merchants nonchalantly sitting on crossed legs as if they were benumbed from the sheer weight of an atmosphere so steeped in aroma. The spice market or Egyptian bazaar, another highlight of Istanbul. Just in front of the market is this big flock of pigeons and their feeders selling grain to the tourists. And now we're right on the waterfront, ready for the next adventure.